Have you ever noticed how the smartest people in the room rarely tell you what to do? They make suggestions so subtle, so perfectly timed, that you end up championing their ideas as if they were yours all along. You walk away feeling empowered, convinced you made the choice, yet somehow their agenda moved forward flawlessly. That's not luck. That's the invisible architecture of influence, a dark art perfected by Machiavelli centuries before psychology even had a name. And here's what most people miss. The moment you try to control someone directly, you've already lost. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand or threaten. It simply creates conditions where the desired outcome becomes inevitable, where people race toward your goal, believing they're running from it. Think about the last time someone told you not to do something. What happened? Your mind immediately fixated on that exact thing. Tell someone a secret is dangerous to know, and they'll move heaven and earth to uncover it. Warn them a path is too risky, and suddenly they're planning the expedition. This isn't rebellion. It's human nature responding to a psychological trigger as old as consciousness itself. We're wired to defend our autonomy, even when we have no idea what to do with it. Machiavelli understood this with frightening clarity. He watched rulers fail by demanding loyalty, observed generals lose battles by barking orders, witnessed relationships crumble under the weight of control. And from this wreckage, he extracted a truth that still governs human behavior today. People will die to protect their freedom of choice, even if that choice destroys them. So the real question becomes, how do you guide someone without them feeling guided? How do you plant an idea so deep in their mind that they mistake it for their own revelation? The answer lies in understanding a simple principle. Humans don't resist ideas. They resist the feeling of being influenced. Remove that feeling, and you can lead them anywhere. Machiavelli's genius was in creating what we might call the architecture of autonomy, a framework where every path leads to your destination, but each one feels like personal discovery. Imagine you're in a negotiation and you want the other person to accept your terms. The amateur approach is to push harder, stack evidence, apply pressure. But what happens? Resistance builds. Defenses rise. The conversation becomes a battle. Now imagine instead you say something like, "You know what? Maybe you're right to be cautious. This might not be the best timing for you." Watch what happens. The pressure vanishes. Their guard drops. And suddenly, they're the ones reconsidering, finding reasons why it might actually work, convincing themselves of your original position. You didn't win the argument. You made the argument irrelevant. This is what Machiavelli called the illusion of control, and it operates everywhere once you learn to see it. Parents use it when they offer children a choice between two parent-approved options. Managers deploy it when they ask for input on decisions already made. Negotiators master it by framing discussions around predetermined boundaries. The person feels empowered, heard, respected. Meanwhile, the outcome was never in question. But here's where it gets darker, because this principle extends far beyond simple choices. It shapes identity itself. When you want someone to behave a certain way, you don't command the behavior. You invoke the identity that naturally produces it. You don't tell someone to be more responsible. You say, "I've always admired how thoughtful you are about these things, which is why I'm surprised by this decision." Now their ego has to resolve the contradiction. They'll change the behavior just to maintain the self-image you reflected back to them. You didn't manipulate them. You simply held up a mirror they felt compelled to match. Machiavelli discovered that the human mind has a fatal flaw. It values consistency above truth. Once someone commits to an identity or position, they'll defend it against logic, evidence, even their own interests. So if you can subtly shape how someone sees themselves, you control their future actions without ever issuing a command. The forbidden apple principle works on this same psychological foundation. Make something slightly forbidden, slightly dangerous, slightly exclusive, and desire multiplies exponentially. Machiavelli would float controversial ideas in his writings, frame them as too radical, too dangerous for public consumption. And what happened? Those exact ideas spread like wildfire because people believed they were accessing forbidden knowledge, rebelling against authority, thinking dangerously. They had no idea they were following his script perfectly. The same dynamic plays out in modern marketing, relationships, leadership. The product you can't have becomes the product you obsess over. The person who seems just out of reach becomes irresistible. The idea framed as too complex for most people becomes the one everyone wants to master. But there's a deeper layer here that most people never see. Something Machiavelli understood about the structure of human desire itself. We don't want things because they're valuable. We assign value to things based on how they make us feel about ourselves in acquiring them. Status isn't about the object. It's about the story we tell ourselves about deserving it, earning it, being sophisticated enough to recognize its worth. Once you understand this, you realize that persuasion has nothing to do with the thing you're reoffering and everything to do with the identity transformation you re-promising. You're not selling a decision. You're selling them a better version of themselves, one that naturally makes the choice you want them to make. And the beauty is, they'll thank you for it. So how does this actually work in practice? In the messy reality of human interaction, where people are suspicious, defensive, and programmed by years of recognizing manipulation? The answer is in the technique Machiavelli used more than any other: strategic withdrawal. Power in relationships, business, politics doesn't come from presence. It comes from calculated absence. The moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to convince, something shifts in the dynamic. The other person's mind, which was busy constructing defenses against your influence, suddenly has nothing to push against. That empty space becomes magnetic. They start wondering why you're not fighting anymore. What do you know that they don't? Are they missing something? This internal questioning does more to change minds than any argument ever could. Machiavelli would deliberately make himself scarce at crucial moments, not out of weakness, but as a strategic choice. His rivals would scramble to interpret his silence, projecting their fears and insecurities onto it. And in that projection, they'd often make exactly the moves he was waiting for. The echo technique builds on this foundation by turning someone's words into your weapon. When someone expresses an idea, you don't oppose it. You reflect it back slightly modified, wrapped in your framework. They say they're concerned about moving too fast. You respond, "You're absolutely right to want a strategic pace." That's exactly why this timing makes sense, because we're positioning ahead of the chaos rather than reacting to it. You agreed with their concern while completely redirecting its implications. Now when they think about being strategic, they're thinking your thought in their voice. This is how ideas become viral in someone's mind. They can't identify it as external influence because it sounds like their own reasoning. The self-image hook operates on similar principles, but cuts even deeper. Everyone carries an idealized version of themselves, a story about who they are at their core. Smart, fair, independent, principled, whatever the narrative might be. When you want someone to do something, you don't ask them to betray that story. You show them how the action reinforces it. A person who sees themselves as generous will give more when you acknowledge their generosity than when you ask for charity. Someone who identifies as a straight shooter will be more honest when you note their integrity than when you demand truth. You're not manipulating them. You're activating the part of themselves they most want to be. Machiavelli took this further with what might be called the reverse flaw strategy. He would openly admit weaknesses that cost him nothing while concealing his actual vulnerabilities. This manufactured authenticity disarms suspicion. People think they understand you, think they've seen beneath the mask, and that false intimacy makes them careless. You shared a weakness, so you must be genuine. They never realized the weakness was curated specifically to produce that trust. In modern terms, think about leaders who admit they're not detail-oriented but great with vision, or negotiators who confess they're too trusting, but always honor agreements. These confessions seem like transparency, but they're strategic positioning. They redirect attention away from real weaknesses while building perceived authenticity. The controlled underdog position uses similar misdirection. When you allow others to underestimate you, not through actual weakness, but through careful presentation, you gain an asymmetric advantage. They relax, they reveal more than they should. They make assumptions about what you can and cannot do. And then, when you demonstrate capability, the shock itself becomes a weapon. They can't recalibrate fast enough. Perhaps the most devastating technique, one that Machiavelli used to topple rivals and reshape power structures, is the seed of doubt. You don't attack someone's position directly. You ask a question, plant a small inconsistency, introduce one piece of information that doesn't quite fit their narrative. Then you walk away. Their mind does the rest. They'll argue with themselves more effectively than you ever could. That single doubt will grow, metastasize, consume their certainty from within. A tiny crack becomes a chasm because their own mind applies the pressure. This is why Machiavelli rarely engaged in prolonged debates. He'd make one precise cut and let the wound work itself deeper. The silence game amplifies this effect exponentially. Most people cannot tolerate silence in conversation. It feels like judgment, like expectation, like a void demanding to be filled. So they fill it. They explain, justify, confess, offer information you never asked for. And every word they speak while you remain silent shifts power in your direction. Silence creates discomfort, and discomfort creates compliance. Machiavelli understood that the person talking is the person losing, because they're revealing their position while you reveal nothing. But here is the trap that catches everyone who studies these techniques. Knowing them doesn't make you immune. In fact, the more you understand manipulation, the more vulnerable you become to your own cleverness. Machiavelli warned about this directly. The greatest danger for the manipulator is beginning to believe in his own manipulations, mistaking the performance for reality. The moment you become attached to outcomes, the moment you need people to comply, you've lost the detachment that makes these techniques work. True Machiavellian influence comes from a place of genuine indifference to whether people follow your suggestion or not, because you've arranged multiple paths that all serve your interests. This is the final evolution of reverse psychology, creating ecosystems of choice where autonomy is real but irrelevant because every option advances your position. You're not controlling people's decisions. You're controlling the menu of available decisions. And that's why these techniques remain invisible to those experiencing them. They never feel manipulated because they genuinely made choices. Those choices simply happen to exist in a reality quietly structured by someone who understood human nature better than they understood themselves. Machiavelli's ultimate insight wasn't about deception. It was about recognizing that human behavior is predictable, that autonomy is mostly performance, that influence works best when it doesn't feel like influence at all. Master that, and you never need to manipulate anyone. You just need to arrange the environment and let human nature run its course.